Hey everybody, James Chen, aka Jay Chenzor here, coming to you directly from Las Vegas, where Evo Day 2 has just completed. And obviously we've gotten to the top 8 of Street Fighter 6. And so, to get you guys a little prepared of who you're going to see in this top 8 and to get to know a little bit about them more. I'm going to go over these players one by one for you guys, and just going to go through them from top to bottom. So basically just start from the 4 players on the winner side here in the order that they're listed in the bracket, and most likely the order in which they will start playing their matches. So the first player on the winner side is going to be Kakeru. And, obviously, for those of you who have been following the scene for a while, Kakeru is here in top 8 straight from his Capcom Cup 11 championship win. And so, no shock that he's here with that JP. A lot of people have been talking about JP as, potentially the strongest characters. When you look at a lot of the tier lists from a lot of the top players, people are listing JP as potentially one of the strongest characters here. And, honestly, I feel like a lot of that is because of Kakeru and how well he plays that character. And again, for me, it's fantastic to see him do this because, obviously he's been playing fighting games for a while. There was one Evo moment in Street Fighter V versus Kaba that he had the most miraculous read on a wake-up situation, but he was going by the handle Uzura at the time, but since then has changed his name to Kakeru. And starting in Street Fighter 6, he came right out the gates with that JP and was definitely one of the strongest JPs on the planet, actually. And, at first everybody was using JP, and so everybody was like, kind of bandwagoning on that character because it was very strong, and eventually the character did get nerfed. To the point where Kakeru was actually like, well, I guess I gotta learn somebody else. And so he started picking up some other characters. He picked up like Bison, he picked up Akuma, for example. But there was something about watching Kakeru not play JP that almost kind of made it seem like he was sad, that he didn't have his boy JP anymore. Capcom since then gave JP a lot of his power back, buffed up a few things, and JP is definitely back to being a threat. But the way that this game is balanced out, it really is that the characters are all basically the people winning with the characters are all the specialists, okay? So, obviously Kakeru is just one of the greatest JP players out there, and here he is, winner side top 8. Now, I'm sure he has a lot of motivation to win this, and people are like, well, he won Capcom Cup 11. He got $1 million, right? So wouldn't that kind of like taper off a little bit of the motivation? But don't get it twisted here. Obviously, winning $1 million means that, you could very well be set for life financially if you manage that money particularly well, because it's going to be more money than a lot of people are going to see, in their lifetime just by winning one tournament here. However, while winning Capcom Cup may be make you set financially for the rest of your life potentially, winning Evo kind of makes it so that your legacy is set for life. Winning Evo kind of just puts you into this tier, this echelon of players out there because, everyone knows that it is the biggest open bracket tournament. In fact, Evo is just like the biggest, single location tournament in all of competitive I would say esports, but it might just be of all competitive anything, right? Because of most things, there's qualifiers coming in, and so same thing with Capcom Cup, right? And so when you win a Capcom Cup, obviously you've had to perform well over the course of the year and qualify and such, but you don't have as many people to fight against in the actual tournament. Evo is just like a test of endurance, a test of consistency, a test of clutch, a test of skill, all that stuff all rolled into one weekend. And so when you win Evo, I mean, you're putting yourself at the tail end of, you know, such champions as like Daigo winning 2 Street Fighter 4s, followed by Fuudo, Sien and Bon-chan and Tokido, obviously, Problem X, et cetera. Winning Evo is a very, very big deal. And I'm sure, you know, if Kakeru can actually win Capcom Cup and then win Evo in the same like calendar year, that's kind of insane. It's only been done by Momochi in the past, winning Capcom Cup and then winning Evo. So Kakeru would put himself into a, I guess you could call it like a list of players that would only be 2 people long. And so, you know, for sure, this is something that he is definitely going to want to try to put himself into that position where he can really call himself one of the greatest fighting game players, at least for, you know, for Street Fighter 6, the Street Fighter 6 era that we're currently in. And so he's in a great position here. He has put himself in the winner's bracket, and you know, he is going to be a person to watch. And, you know, don't also remember, like, after the very first Street Fighter 6 year, Kakeru got top 6 in that super stacked bracket at Evo, the very first Street Fighter 6 Evo. Then immediately went on to Gamers 8 and won that one. And he won a ton of money there already. And he did it with, you know, one of the most epic runs. He perfect parried like everything, and even he was like, I don't know what happened. I just was in the zone and I perfect parried everything, and it just worked out for him. And so he has just been so consistent this whole entire Street Fighter 6 period. And for me, I'm just really happy to see him back on the JP, playing the JP. It feels like this is the character he was meant to play. In fact, you know, a lot of times players will become synonymous with their characters, like a Gamer Bee and Adon from Street Fighter 4, you know, that kind of situation. And I think like Kakeru and JP are kind of there right now. Like for me, I don't feel like you can talk about JP, you know, and his performance at tournaments without talking about Kakeru. And so his first opponent that he's going to be going up against, I just mentioned him as a former Evo champion, and that is, of course, Fuudo. Fuudo, in 2011, he was the first Evo champion for Street Fighter 4 after Daigo won back-to-back years. Daigo defeated Justin Wong, then Ricky Ortiz, and then the next year, Fuudo was able to defeat Latif in grand finals with his Fei Long in Street Fighter 4. And Fuudo has just been absolutely one of the most consistent players. And keep in mind too, this guy is not just like an amazing fighting game player. This guy is like just a gamer. He is so good at just video games in general. You know, in 2011, when he showed up and ended up winning that, a lot of people did not know who he was. He just felt like he kind of came out of nowhere and was like, wait, who's this Japanese guy? But the entire Virtua Fighter scene knew exactly who Fuudo was, because he is one of the gods of Virtua Fighter. And in fact, shout outs to LA Akira, aka Gerald Abraham. He has told me so many stories about Fuudo and his success in Virtua Fighter. There was always a bunch of, you know, the gods of Virtua Fighter. I know Itazan, Itabashi Zangief, obviously was one of them. Chibita or Chibita, I'm not sure how to pronounce that properly. Another one, et cetera, et cetera. And Fuudo was kind of like the latest god of Virtua Fighter. And keep in mind, when you are ranked as a god in Virtua Fighter, it's not just like you're one of the, no, you are like the best. And like it is like almost impossible to beat these guys. I mean, that's how good they were at Virtua Fighter. Fuudo was one of the younger ones to actually get to that position. And in fact, what Gerald told me was that, because Virtua Fighter is so much about this game, about reading your opponent and knowing their tendencies and knowing what to do, a lot of the times, there would be mentors, right? Like there'd be one player who was a god and then, mentored another player, and then that player eventually got to that level of potentially being a Virtua Fighter god as well. But the student would never be able to beat the teacher, because the teacher basically kind of was like, told them everything that they needed to know so they knew what to do. And so they always had that leg up over their student. And according to Gerald, Fuudo is one of the first gods who actually ended up surpassing his master in Virtua Fighter. Again, I may have gotten some details wrong here and there. I apologize. I'm just kind of going off the memory of some of the stories I was told. But other stories that I was told, just to show you how young he was when he actually became a god in Virtua Fighter. Gerald told me a story that they'd be playing at an arcade, and nobody could beat Fuudo. Like, he just got to the point where Fuudo was just beating everybody. But at the time, he was super young. And what happened is that the arcade, eventually, at a certain hour, would basically close to minors and stay open for, non-minors, basically. And so a lot of the times, the players would just wait for that time, so that Fuudo had to leave the arcade. And so like all of the other players would be like, see you later, goodbye. And then they could play without having to deal with Fuudo all the time. So again, this guy is just an amazing player. There was even, I think, a Square Enix gun game. I never remember what it's called, but it's like this light gun game where you could use two guns and they would magnetize to each other. And depending on how you magnetize them to each other, you would get different weapons and power-ups. And apparently Fuudo was the champion of that game in Japan as well. So like I said, this guy is just, gamer incarnate here. And he's just been so consistent year after year after year. And right before Evo, he won the Topanga S group. He won the Topanga League S group. And then he won Blink Respawn as well. 2 tournaments back to back. So coming into Evo, he was on fire. So I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that here he is in top 8 on winner's side. His reward is, of course, he has to go up against Kakeru, which is, oh boy, that is going to be a crazy match. But you're definitely going to watch that. It's going to be a country kill right there, right? Two Japanese players going up against each other. But again, Fuudo has just been such a... names, just like, what's the word? Like his name, he's just a part of the Street Fighter culture at this point in time. Like, you can't talk about any of these Street Fighter games without talking about Fuudo and how strong he is as a player. So really happy to see him here and really excited to see if he can be one of the, another player who is able to win more than one Evo since Street Fighter 4 dropped, because obviously during that era is when the tournament started just becoming massive in terms of how many players are in there. And if he could actually pull that off, that would be super, super impressive. On the other side of the winner's bracket is Mena RD. Look, Mena RD, if you guys don't know who Mena RD is, if you guys are still, casually watching Evo and aren't familiar with Mena RD, make sure you are familiar with him, because this is a player who, the drive for him to be one of the best is, you could make one of those movies out of him where he's just that obsessed guy who just has to be the best and eventually, triumphs overall and wins. Because yes, he is a 2-time Capcom Cup winner, 2 times in Street Fighter V, the first time defeating Tokido in an absolute upset. Like, people were not expecting that to happen at all. And then of course, the last year for Street Fighter V, Mena repeated and took out Zen in the grand finals of that tournament. And so Mena became basically the only 2-time Capcom Cup winner since the Street Fighter 4 era, Street Fighter 4-5 era. So Mena RD is, again, like, I can talk about his platitudes. He just won Evo Japan, his second Evo Japan in a row. So going to the foreign country of Japan and winning back-to-back years, which is incredible. This last year was 7,000 players in Japan, and Mena RD outlasted all of them, defeating Ryukichi in grand finals. But like, I can talk about all the records and everything like that, but I don't think that does the story for Mena RD any justice, because like I said, there are few people that I've met that have this just fire in them, this drive. Like when you talk to him, when you hear him talk about Street Fighter and everything like that, you know, he lost that Blink respawn, and one of his tweets was like, I never want this feeling again. Like, I just do not want this feeling. And that really kind of defines how he plays. You know, some of the greatest athletes of all time in athletic sports and such, you know, the Michael Jordans, the Wayne Gretzky's, the Kobe Bryant's, for example, they had a very common trait in that they hated to lose. And oftentimes, I am a personal believer in hating to lose is more powerful than wanting to win. And, you know, those greats out there, you know, in all the athletic sports, a lot of that was driven by their just absolute, disgust at losing even, regular season games or anything, right? The competitive spirit burns in them, and Mena RD has that fire. And how could he not? I mean, honestly, like, he is a kid from the Dominican Republic, okay? And, obviously grew up, in a situation where, he didn't have a lot of money and such. And, this was just a hobby of his. He played a lot of fighting games. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he started with Smash Brothers at first and eventually shifted over to Street Fighter. And, he's playing this game and, he's getting good at it. He has a lot of players there who can mentor him. Shout outs to DRI, for example, a longtime player from the Dominican Republic who had been coming to Evos for years. And I'm sure DRI has actually done a lot of work, helping mentor Mena RD. Mena RD also credits playing against who he calls his brother, basically, Louis Man, who basically, I guess, was the one that kind of got him into fighting games in the first place. And, he just had this nice culture of playing fighting games. And then he got to Capcom Cup and he defeated Tokido in grand finals. And his star just rose right there at that point. It was just one of those stories that you love to see in any sort of competitive game, right? It's the underdog, the little engine that could, in a way, In fact, after he won that Capcom Cup, when he returned to the Dominican Republic, he was a celebrity. He was a celebrity at that point. The prize pool wasn't as large back then. I think it was 250 plus a little bit of bonus from some costume from some DLC. So I think it was like 300 and something total. Maybe it just was 250. I don't remember the exact amount, but that's a lot of money in the Dominican Republic. And when Mena RD returned to the Dominican Republic, what did he do? He, started his own esports team down there to help fly out his countrymates who wanted to travel and play at a lot of events. He helped build an esports center for the players to go to and to be able to practice. It was such a big deal that he won that, I went down for an event in the Dominican Republic, and it took place in like a government building. Like the government was like, here, you can use this venue to run the tournament. And, he's had meetings with a bunch of the government officials in the Dominican Republic trying to maybe develop more of an esports program for the country and such. And so like he gave so much back to his country and to his family as well. He's done so much for his family. And then again, of course, he won another Capcom Cup and got a bunch more money after that. But, you know, I was told stories, and I know I've told the story many times on stream, but, you know, when I was in the Dominican Republic, you know, one of his friends was telling me at one point in time, you know, he was driving with Mena RD in the passenger seat, and they stopped at a red light, and the guy on a motorcycle just rode up there, looked to the side, and looked through the car window, was like, "Hey, MenaRD," you know, like people knew him. He was a celebrity out there, and to say like the fact that MenaRD winning that first Capcom Cup and then the second Capcom Cup actually can affect, you know, things that are happening literally in the country of the Dominican Republic, you know, is just like absolutely wild, and it's just one of my favorite stories to tell about how the FGC can affect so many different people in so many ways. And, you know, the fact that the FGC really does afford a lot of opportunity to so many different players from so many different regions. I mean, this past Capcom Cup, we saw what Blas did for Chile. Chile has had a history of very strong players, however, but, you know, there's just so many of these stories of players, you know, winning and returning to their home country as heroes. And it's one of my favorite things that the fighting game community has allowed, you know, a lot of people to experience. Imagine if we didn't have the fighting game community. I'm sure Mena RD would have been amazing at a lot of things. Like I said, his drive just to be great is second to none. But, you know, because of the fighting game community, he has been able to affect so many people and help so many others, and really do a lot of work to, you know, I mean, just give people experiences that they've never had the chance to experience. And it's just such a wonderful thing. And again, Mena RD, very, very passionate player, but also, you know, despite the pop-offs and the bravado and stuff, he is very humble, and he knows his background. And again, it's one of the things that makes him so admirable as a player, as a person. And it's hard to, I could basically, you know, just gush about him and say these wonderful things about him for ever. So again, it's just wonderful to see, and he is back here, and he wants to win this so badly, because remember, he was second place 2 years ago against Angrybird. When Angrybird won the first year for Street Fighter 6, he defeated Mena RD in grand finals. And Mena RD has won 2 Evo Japans. But to win an Evo Worlds, to add to that, like that is like, you know, like, for example, a player like Arslan Ash has been able to win Evo Japans and Evo Worlds. Mena RD wants to be in that, you know, in that group, in that elite club, basically. So you know he wants to win this very, very badly. And if he does, I mean, obviously, he's had most of his success in Street Fighter, and when we talk about the greatest fighting game player of all time, we're usually thinking about like, you know, person who's played a lot of games. But if you win 2 Evo Japans, 2 Capcom Cups, and an Evo Worlds, like, even if it's only Street Fighter games that he's been having the success in, like, how is he not in that conversation for greatest of all time? Because that kind of success, with the amount of players there are these days, you know he could have that success in any game he chooses to play, right? It's just that it just happens to be Street Fighter that he's concentrating on. But if he went to any other game, he would have that success. But his focus and his passion is Street Fighter, and his level of success is just unmatched, honestly. It's an amazing, amazing story. So Mena RD's opponent on the winner side of this bracket is going to be Phenom from Norway. And Phenom, I mean, he's been playing for a long time, and, you know, like how Xiao Hai's name is basically the kid because he started beating up everybody when he was a very young child. Phenom most likely got his handle because at a young age he was beating up a bunch of people in fighting games. In fact, 29 years old right now, or around 29 years old. However, he'd been playing since Street Fighter 4. I mean, he had played in a bunch of Evos even during the Street Fighter 4 period. And for the longest of time, Phenom was just basically dominating that region of Europe over there. And he has been such a strong player for such a long, long time. And in Street Fighter 5, it's kind of where he really, I don't want to say like burst onto the scene, but really started making a name for himself. And in fact, one of the most infamous moments that Phenom had was actually year one of Street Fighter 5 at Canada Cup in 2016, I believe it was, where he got third place, only behind Xiao Hai and Knuckle-Doo. He was using Necalli at the time, and this was the infamous tournament where he actually used Necalli's command grab and threw Daigo 5 times in a row in the corner, basically with throw loops, back when in Season 1 Street Fighter V when they had throw loops. If I'm not mistaken, it was 4 command throws. The 4th one stunned Daigo, and then the 5th one was the one that finished him off. And yeah, ever since then, Phenom has just been one of the absolute strongest players in the European region. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, in Street Fighter League EU last year, he was teamed up with Angrybird and Big Bird, and they were all so strong. I mean, and Veggie as well. It was the 4 of them, and they basically dominated that season of Street Fighter League. But during the course of this, it's really interesting because very early on, after for Street Fighter V and even starting towards a little bit towards Street Fighter 6, Phenom, I don't think you could find anybody that you could talk to that would be like, yeah, Phenom's peaked. Yeah, he's kind of just reached that, and he's good, but I don't think he'll ever I think everybody could see that Phenom had that potential to become one of the greatest players on the planet. And in fact, during the course of the entire his Street Fighter V career, I was just waiting for that super breakout tournament for him where he was going to win something big, because I really just felt like he was one of the best players on the planet. And he's always had that potential. And the crazy thing about it, he's never lost that potential. I don't think we ever got to a point where it was like, Phenom has always had that potential, but he just can't break through, I don't think people really kind of thought of it that way, but, for a while, I feel like there was this point where Phenom was reaching just he's got that potential. But it just never manifested itself into something beyond that. And the thing is, though, for example, from my standpoint, I've never given up hope on Phenom. I've always felt like he has the ability to just pull this a magical tournament run out of nowhere, and just when Phenom is playing perfect, it's very, very hard to defeat him. And I feel like this Evo might be his moment here, his time to shine. Phenom, like I said, has just been such a solid player. And honestly, I've always said this, I really do think Phenom, in terms of reaction times, is one of the strongest players ever. I remember seeing him on a stream one time where he was just doing single hit confirms with Cammy, I think it was, and Cammy's crouching medium kick, which is really hard to single hit confirm for 99.99% of the planet. And Phenom was just doing it like it was nothing. It was just it was mind blowing. He was just, it's not that hard. It's just, you just do this, and I'm just staring at the stream right, Phenom, right. You just do that. And I'm like, come on, dude, come on. But again, he has always been in the mix. And in fact, for a while, like I said, he was dominating that specific region of Europe that, where he's from, the Norway region. My geography of Europe is awful. All the Europeans out there watching this video are going to yell at me right now. I'm sorry. But yeah, the region where Norway is. Oh my God, James. But yeah, like he's always dominated that. So he has been at Capcom Cup year after year after year after year after year. And it was only until recent where other players like Rikamens Barnett and such, started finally giving him a little bit of a run in those regions. But, this whole time, Phenom has remained super strong. And keep in mind, in that Canada Cup that I just talked about in 2016, I think he was 20 years old at that time, if my math is correct here. 20 years old. And since then, he has never really slipped at all. I feel like he is such a strong player. And like I said, in my heart, I've just always believed he has that one breakout tournament in him. And if he can come on in here and all of a sudden just take Evo 2025 as his breakout tournament, I mean, that would be amazing, and I would love, love, love to see that. And, one of the scary things about Phenom is he does have a lot of characters, the preeminent Ken down player, the propaganda, as I always called it, talking about how Ken is weak. But, he does have Ken, but he's mostly using Cammy these days. And obviously, he's the kind of player that I feel like can just kind of bust out any character that he wants. And so I just feel like Phenom, I would be absolutely overjoyed to see him be able to take this tournament here because, like I said, he has just been so consistent and so strong. Honestly, one of my favorite players to watch all the time, and it's hard for me to not root for him whenever I see him in these events. So I really hope hope for some good fortunes for Phenom. Obviously, it's tough because wishing good fortunes for Phenom means like, oh, you want Mena RD to lose. No, I don't want any of these guys to lose, okay? Look, I just want, I'm that stupid person. Can't they all win? Can't they all get first place? I'm that kind of person. But, I feel like for Phenom, this kind of win would mean so much to him because a lot of the other players on this list have already won a lot of very big tournaments. So for Phenom being able to outlast all of them and to be able to take Capcom Cup, I'm sorry, not Capcom, Evolution 2025 would be absolutely amazing. But we're going to move on to the loser side over here. And the first player here on the loser side is a player who honestly just had one of the craziest years last year that I've seen for a fighting game player, and that is Xiao Hai from China. Again, translating literally to little child, but the best way to call him would be like kid, the kid, like Billy the Kid. He's, the kid showing up over here. And last year he took EWC in Street Fighter 6 and then got second place at UFA. And then, of course, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves came out, and he started dominating that game very, very early on, falling just shy in second place in EWC for Fatal Fury just earlier, just a few weeks ago, only losing to Goichi. And Goichi's amazing as an amazing player. But Xiao Hai has really been on a roll lately, and he has been so strong and so solid here. And one of the advantages that he really does have is that he knows how to play a bunch of characters. I mean, I remember at EWC, I think he used 3 whole characters, Ken, Cammy, and M. Bison. He's added Mai to his repertoire. In fact, at Capcom Cup, before people realized how strong Mai was, I remember Xiao Hai saying he was learning Mai, and he was like, yeah, I think Mai is one of the best characters in the game. And a lot of people were like, he thinks Mai? Like, Mai's not that. And now, of course, everybody is terrified of Mai. So again, Xiao Hai is, he's just been having the craziest run. And it's so funny, too, because, he's, he's always been a very prominent player. He's always been someone that everybody knows. He's good at every game. He is basically the undisputed best player of KOF, maybe in history, right? Like, he might be the best KOF player ever in history. And I don't think a lot of people would argue with that. I mean, in KOF 15, he basically was dominating like almost every tournament. He's the only player in recent memory that I can think of, maybe outside of a Sonic Fox, but even Sonic Fox started getting a lot of rivalries and a lot of the NRS games that they were entering. But Xiao Hai is probably the only player that I could say at any of the past Evos, I would take that player over the field. Like, competition for every fighting game has gotten so intense, and yet I probably would have picked Xiao Hai to win like most KOF 15 tournaments over the field. And that is just absolutely crazy. In fact, this might be one of those tall tales that just keeps exaggerating, but if I'm not mistaken, I think there was one time where Xiao Hai actually had a team tournament against 20 Japanese players. Like, it probably was like 5, and then it became 10, and then it became 20 or whatever like that. But for some reason, I remember it as 20. And Xiao Hai ended up beating them all. Xiao Hai was the only person on that team. It was basically Xiao Hai versus 20 Japanese players, and all 20 of them were just trying to beat Xiao Hai once. And if I'm not mistaken, Xiao Hai ended up beating all of them. I mean, that's how crazy he is. I mean, we're seeing this a lot from, players like Blaz and Cryme, and I'm going to mention another one pretty soon. These young players, Sonic Fox is another perfect example of this, but players who have basically grown up with fighting games, right? Like, literally from a young age, they're playing fighting games either with an older sibling or their father is teaching them. We're seeing this with like Online Kale, with what he's doing in the Mortal Kombat scene, because he's the son of Online Tony. Xiao Hai was kind of that before everybody else. So he was literally playing fighting games at a super young age, and so he's just been doing this his entire life. And so his instincts, the ability to see the code in the Matrix, basically, for Xiao Hai is just, that's what I just picture him as. Like, I feel like he can see fighting games in a way that a lot of other people don't. So he's put a lot of focus on Street Fighter recently, and I did hear he got knocked out of the City of the Wolves tournament before top 8. So he's kind of bitter and angry about that, or upset. Now, I don't want to say angry or bitter, but obviously disappointed in himself, upset. And what better way to make up for that than winning Street Fighter 6 at Evo? Now, obviously, he's going to be starting on the loser side of the bracket, so it's going to be a very tough run for him. But again, I mean, he's absolutely capable of it. I don't know if we've ever had an Evo champion for the main Street Fighter game that started from the losers bracket. I'm gonna have to do some research on that, but if I'm not mistaken, I can't think of one right now. But I mean, the way that these tournaments are going these days, I feel like we're getting firsts, all the time. So if it happened this year for the first time for a player coming from the loser side of the bracket to actually take Evo 2025 would be really, really cool to see. I mean, basically starting top 8 in loser side is what I mean. But yeah, so Xiao Hai, I think if he can take this, it would be like one of the most impressive calendar years that we've seen from a player, because not only, like I said, did he win EWC last year, but he was winning KOF tournaments and winning Fatal Fury tournaments, all in between and such. And, to be able to play that many fighting games at a high level is not easy these days. I mean, you had players like Tokido. He used to walk around venues with like 5 medals around his neck, at Evo, because he just would play in everything. And even players like Tokido nowadays just only focus on Street Fighter. And so the fact that Xiao Hai can remain this strong in so many games, and again, Fatal Fury, just because it's SNK, doesn't mean that it plays anything like KOF, right? Two very different games, and yet Xiaohai took to Fatal Fury like nothing. And keep in mind too, like I remember talking to someone on Xiaohai's team, and either he was just totally lying to me or something, but he was like, yeah, Xiaohai's not really as into Fatal Fury. You know, KOF is a specialty, so there's no guarantee Xiaohai will be one of the best in Fatal. And then he just comes out and just like starts winning everything in Fatal Fury. So, you know, like maybe they were just trying to like, you know, play the long con or something like that. But again, to be able to stay that strong in so many games at the same time is very, very difficult. And of course, you know, at EWC when he won, you know, his wife ran on stage and he got to have a nice celebration with her and everything like that. And, you know, Xiaohai is really a player who's always been there, but I feel like of late, his stock and his you know, the awareness of the casual fighting game audience, or even just the, you know, more dedicated audience, you know, Xiaohai is definitely, at least in the Street Fighter world, a name more on, you know, people's minds. Because again, it had always been SNK, KOF, KOF, KOF. But now he is showing what he can do in Street Fighter as well. Going up against Xiaohai in the first round of loser bracket is Leshar. So Leshar, he is a player originally from Korea, who basically, it's an interesting path that he's taken, because a lot of people have been talking about Lashar at one point in time, about how good he is, like how just like I don't like, this guy is just another world in terms of fighting game players. And you know, he was doing really well in Korea, but then at one point in time, you know, to really focus on this Street Fighter career, he moved to Japan, specifically to join the Street Fighter League Japan over there, because I don't think you could enter Street Fighter League Japan unless you lived in Japan. And so he moved out there. He was on the same team with Tokido, and the two of them trained. And, you know, during this course of time, it was always the same thing. You talk to any top player, every top player would just be like, yeah, Lashar is one of the best. Lashar is just easily one of the best players out there. He's just so good. Oh my gosh. You know, and the interesting thing about it is you would see those flashes of just absolute total brilliance from Lashar, but he always seemed to fall short of, you know, that the platitudes that he was getting. He hadn't won very many big tournaments. And then in 2025, everything changed, because he won Combo Breaker. And it was really the first time he had won a tournament of that magnitude, right? With that many good players and that many strong competitors going up against him. And then he backed it up by winning CEO like a month later. And again, remember, outside of Evo, Combo Breaker and CEO are the two biggest Street Fighter tournaments in the US, and probably two of the biggest you know, fighting game tournaments in the world. Combo Breaker and CEO are like basically like, if Evo is the top one right here, Combo Breaker and CEO are just basically right under them. And he won both of those back to back. And so finally, you know, like he was living up finally to this reputation that he had. And so, you know, so many people were expecting Leshar, you know, to do so well, and he was finally proving it here. And so now he's coming here into Evo. And keep in mind too that what was I going to say? Keep in mind too that nobody has ever won Evo, CEO, and Combo Breaker in the same year. And if Leshar can pull that off, that would be ridiculous. It would be absolutely amazing, and really, you know, we could then, you know, I mean, again, it's silly to say this, like, oh, now we can officially say he is one of the best. I mean, he's one of the best right now already. But to be able to win all three of those in an unprecedented, like, triple crown that nobody has ever been able to pull off before, to be that consistent to take all three of those would be amazing, amazing, amazing. And he did actually So if you're wondering who sent him to losers, it was actually Phenom. Phenom, apparently, the way that I didn't get a chance to see it personally, but the way someone described it to me, it was that Phenom almost kind of like ate him up. And so, again, Phenom is just having that tournament here. Like I said, we'll see how well it holds over once we get to the top 8. But Lashar only lost the Phenom, and since then basically took everyone out, including, to get into top 8, he defeated Punk. Punk the God, last year's champion. One of the players that obviously I mentioned, as a player to look out for in this tournament. But obviously, look, the tournament is stacked, and losing to Leshar is not a shock to anybody, right? Because Leshar is just amazing. Punk took game number 1, and then Leshar came back, was able to take the next 2 games to win it 2-1, to eliminate Punk from the tournament and cement himself into this top 8. Again, Kakeru's been in many Evo top 8. Well, he's been in one previous top 8. Fuudo has been in top 8s. Mena RD top 8s. Top 8s all the time. Xiao Hai has won plenty of Evos. This is really going to be Lashar's first major Evo run. He has not historically done particularly well at Evos, despite the platitudes that he has been given. But this time, if he can take this, that would be just like the cherry on top. That's the perfect way, writers often say, just trying to figure out how to end their book is one of the hardest things to do. And if you find just the perfect way to end your book, you're just like, oh my God, this is so great. This is perfect. It's like the thing that writers kind of look for. If Leshar can cap his book here with an Evo win after Combo Breaker and after CEO, what a story. What a story that we'll talk about for decades to come in the fighting game community. Now, it feels like at every Evo for Street Fighter, a lot of times you'll get top 8 players. Like I said, there's a ton of players that if they made top 8, you'd be like, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, okay, it makes sense if this player is there. But there's always one player that just kind of sneaks in there, and everybody's like, wait, who's this guy? Wait, what? Wait, huh? And this year, that spot goes to Micky from Hong Kong. And I was talking about a little bit earlier about the young players who have been playing fighting games for a long time. If I'm not mistaken, according to the Liquipedia page, again, shout outs to Incross, who just got a Canon Award. Congratulations for his work on the Liquipedia site. But Micky is 16 or 17 years old right now. Is that making Micky 17? Anyways, it just came to my head. I was like, wait, he's Micky 17. Oh my gosh. But he is from Hong Kong. And again, to say that I don't know much about him, that's just the truth. He is a player that I have seen his name before. He's played a lot in, ICFC Asia's a long time ago in tournaments that I know that I commentated for. So we've definitely seen him, but he was losing Luke at those times. He was using a bunch of different characters. But right now he is on that Cammy and he is doing some damage with that character. He is having just one of those runs that, is one of those storybook runs. Because he hasn't really performed to this level, at any point in his career. He got second place at the Asia regional finals, Asia East, I think it is, regional finals. He only lost the hot dog, so he got second place there. Obviously, he's good and he's capable of winning this, but the consistency and that level hasn't been there. And remember, there's so many players that you got to play a ton of matches here. And if I remember what I counted a little bit earlier, Micky started the tournament on the winner's side and won 5 rounds in the winner's side. His 6th match was against Shine from New York City, Endemic Shine, and he lost that one 2-0 and got sent to the loser's bracket. From that point forward, he just basically had the run of his life, because from there, he won nine matches in a row in the loser side, just winning match after match after match. And again, that is a grueling grind. The reason why you don't want to go to the loser's bracket early is because you have to play so many more matches, which just means you have that many more chances to lose. But he went through so many players, including his run back against Shine. He actually managed to take Shine out this time 2-1. So he won the run back there. And then later on in the bracket, actually defeated Ending Walker to put Ending Walker tied for, I think, 13th place. I'll double check that later. But Ending Walker didn't quite make to the top 8 there because he ended up losing to Micky. So Micky, again, from Hong Kong. Hong Kong's always had a lot of strong players. Chris Wong, Hot Dog, of course, another one from Hong Kong. And, just so many strong players there. But this is a player that, I don't think anybody... And I mean, everyone always jokes like Evo is the bracket buster, right? The fantasy bracket buster. I don't think anybody would have picked Micky to make it to this top 8. So he is definitely that monkey wrench. He is definitely that player who just showed up here and everybody is like, what? Where did this guy come from, And so it's really going to be cool to see how he does. And we've been talking about all these young players like Blas and Crime, from Chile, both of them, like they're 13 and 14 years old. And then, Not Pedro, 19 years old from Brazil. And so many of these young players coming in and doing some damage. And it looks like for this year, that spot is going to go to Micky. Because again, Kakaroo, Fuudo, Mena RD, Phenom, Xiao Hai, Lashar, and, Angrybird, who's at the end over there, which we'll talk about in just a second. They're all veterans. They've all been playing this for a while. Like they're definitely, I don't want to call them up there in age, but they're not this crazy young kid coming out of nowhere blowing everybody up. That is the role for Micky here. And I feel bad that I can't really say more about Micky, that I can't just talk about more of his history and his what he's done. When did he start playing fighting games? Or cool story about past exploit here, doing this, and here's this crazy and wonderful story of how he overcame. Honestly, this is a player that really hasn't been on most people's radars, including mine. At one point in time, I think he might have been one of the highest rated Cammys online on CFN, which does mean clearly he's been putting in the work and practicing and practicing and practicing. And so, definitely, not someone that anybody should think that he doesn't deserve to be here. Very strong player, obviously. And I can't wait to see what he does. I'd be really excited to see him make a very strong run here in the top 8. But in order to do that, as I just previewed a second ago, his opponent is Angrybird, Evo champion of Street Fighter 6 from 2 years ago, defeating Mena RD in grand finals. So Angrybird, again, I mean, wow. I mean, his story... Which it's really cool too, because at this Evo, to get from the resorts world where a lot of people are staying in the hotel to the venue at the Las Vegas Convention Center, you tend to take these the Tesla loop, right? Where you just basically buy a ticket for the day, and then a driver comes by in a Tesla, picks you up, drives through these crazy underground tunnels that looks like you're playing San Francisco Rush 2049 or whatever like that. And in one of the times that I was going to the venue, I actually ended up sharing the ride with one of the original owners of Nasr Esports, NASR Esports, which was the team that first started sponsoring Big Bird and Angrybird. And I had the chance to tell them, I was like, thank you for, giving them this opportunity and helping them grow and, giving them the chance to really show their stuff. And for me, it's always been awesome to see, because, from the Middle Eastern region, we didn't get to see a lot of strong players coming from there. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, Latif getting second place to Fuudo in Evo 2011 in Street Fighter 4, but Latif was living in Arizona at the time, so Arizona, I believe Arizona at the time. Again, Latif, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that one, apologize. So many facts in my head that it's hard to get them straight sometimes. To be able to have players who were living in the Middle East, of course UAE specifically, to be able to travel and really get a chance to show their stuff was really cool to me. And I was really, even before I met anyone from the Nasr team, I was really grateful that Angrybird and Big Bird always had that opportunity. And during the Street Fighter V period, these players were both very, very strong. And Big Bird always felt like he kind of had the upper hand here. But since then, I feel like Angrybird has really kind of branched out on his own. I'm not going to pull an Li jerk and say that, inside joke, Red Bull Kumite New York, that Angrybird has surpassed Big Bird, because it's almost impossible to make that kind of call. But remember, Angrybird did win 2 years ago at Evo, what year is it, 2025? 2023, Evo 2023. So he was the first Street Fighter 6 champion at Evo, defeating Mena RD in grand finals. And since then, he, like last year in Street Fighter League, he had not even probably, he literally had the most dominant performance in the pools period, in the round robin period of the Street Fighter League EU ever, and that ever will be. So in case you guys don't know how Street Fighter League works, you have 3 players go up against 3 players. The first 2 play for 10 points, second 2 player plays for 10 points, and the last 2 players play for 20 points. And they played a total of, if I'm not mistaken, 10 matches. So 5 matches 1 week, 5 matches the second week, and then they would go into the finals bracket. And during the course of that, they put Angrybird on the anchor position all 10 weeks. And like I said, those are 20-point slots. Angrybird finished the season with 200 points. He did not lose a single match in that entire round robin pools period. He was undefeated. He had 200 points by himself, which was more points than some of the other teams combined. For the total points they got at all. And in fact, he only ended up ever losing 1 game, and I think that was to Kusanagi during the brackets, but his team still ended up winning. And Angrybird was just absolutely one of the most dominant players, and really was just, you just watched him play and it just felt like he was invincible. Like there was just nothing anybody could do. And, he's famously said that he's terrible at 2 out of 3, that he really needs the 3 out of 5. And that's why he was always in the 20-point match, because that one was the 3 out of 5. The others were 2 out of 3. But here he is, top 8 again. Same thing in 2023. Lots of 2 out of 3s to get up to this point. And, although he is here in the loser side, he's entering 3 out of 5 land. And if, we can go by what he said and what happened at Street Fighter League, Angrybird just got a massive power up. He just grabbed the mushroom and, he just like turned into Super Angrybird, And so it's going to be tough. And imagine if he can, in 3 years, win 2 Evos for Street Fighter 6 would be ridiculous. And, we can talk about his play all day, but really what stands out to me about Angrybird, I love listening to him talk about fighting games. And I don't necessarily mean the strategy, I mean the philosophy. When you listen to his interviews during Street Fighter League, and again, shout outs to Logan Sama again, did an amazing job as a host for Street Fighter League and just conducted some of the best interviews that I've heard in FGC history, honestly. A lot of the conversations that he had with Angrybird, you hear his philosophy, like, does it worry, does it stress you? And he's just, so many of the responses are like, you can't control everything. Sometimes you'll just do this and you'll lose and you just move on and you come back and try again, and there was just so like this peace, this zen in Angrybird that I know helps contribute to how strong he is as a player. Because let me tell you, playing these tournaments is stressful. And that stress, is usually what does a lot of players in. That like, oh my God, I just need to win one more to get to top 8, and et cetera, et cetera. But Angrybird's philosophy is the way that you hear him, and he just has this calmness about him. Just every time you see him, he just looks peaceful. Like he just looks like, he knows what he's here to do. And if he doesn't accomplish it, it's not going to make him think like, oh my gosh, I wasn't able to accomplish this. Oh, like he's not going to despair over it. And I swear it's that mentality, it's that mindset, and that is helping him play so strong these past few years. And so he's just someone that I admire so much from that. Being an emotional person who, you've all seen my rage clips on YouTube everywhere. So everybody knows how I get when I play fighting games. To see someone like Angrybird to be able to be so calm, be so, just like mature about everything, to see everything exactly as it is and still be able to achieve this goal, to be able to win stuff like Evolution 2023, it's so admirable, and it's just so cool to see. And again, look, what do we got here? Japan, Dominican Republic, Norway, China, Korea, Hong Kong, and UAE. So literally, Kakaroo and Fudo are the only repeat countries here. So 2 Japans, a Dominican Republic, a Norway, China, Korea, Hong Kong, and UAE. It's just this one amazing hobby, this one amazing community, bringing people from all around the world together to play against each other. And, it's, again, I know I do this all the time, but it is why I love this community so much. I've had the fortune of traveling all over the world, and everywhere you go, we just want to play fighting games, man. Even before Evo started, there was just streams of all the players, like including the birds and everything, just sitting there playing playing matches in hotel rooms and stuff and getting ready for this tournament. And speaking of the birds, by the way, I really do also want to emphasize another thing that I really love about the story of Angrybird and Big Bird, and Nasser Esports being able to support them and such. I just said to somebody this weekend at Evo, they were asking me what, does it take to become a strong player and a really top player. And I said, the crazy thing is, like, you have to have people to play with. You have to have people to give you feedbacks and stuff, but it only takes one. It only takes one other person. There's so many stories of 2 players who have just pushed each other so far and just made each other such great players. And the story of Angrybird and Big Bird, that team right there, the Birds as we call them, and it's a good name because honestly, when you have to face them in the bracket, it's pretty terrifying. It really does feel like you're in an Alfred Hitchcock movie, okay? It's scary. But, honestly, a win for Big Bird is a win for Angrybird, in my opinion. And a win for Angrybird is a win for Big Bird, because I don't think either of those players would be in the position that they're in without each other. This is one of the most admirable duos in the FGC right now. And when you've been able to watch their streams where they play against each other, these are two players who are always giving each other advice and telling them what their weaknesses are, and that's how you get better. You make your opponent stronger so that you have to be stronger to be able to beat them. That is the growth, and it only takes two people to do that. And so it is absolutely one of my favorite FGC stories, of Angrybird and Big Bird, two players who have literally driven each other through this drive of competition, through the love of the game, to become two of the best players and just constant threats to take just about every tournament that they play. So really, honestly, it's one of my favorite stories, and I always want to emphasize that about that. Again, Big Bird and Angrybird, both amazing, amazing players. I don't even dare try to say one of them is stronger than the other, because to me, they are the strength. You can't say that one player is stronger than the other, because they basically share that kind of strength. They share that kind of bond with each other. And it's one of those things that, for me, it's wonderful, because so many people in the FGC have met their best friends for life, just because they play fighting games with them and such. So, again, this community is just something that I love so much. And we have this tournament here with 8 players from 7 different countries. And it's such a fabulous thing to see. And so, this is the reason why. I mean, I hope what I was able to do here, was to kind of give you an insight on the background of a lot of these players and what makes them special, and why their journey here is something for you to root for. The best thing that can happen for people who watch fighting games like this is to find a player that they just connect with, that they admire, to become fans, because there's so many wonderful players in this community, and again, when you come to offline events and you meet all these people in person, you find out that all these people are wonderful. They just want to play fighting games, like I said, around the world. And, it's just a shared passion that has just opened the doors for so many people. And keep in mind, too, that this Evo is still a qualifier for Capcom Cup. So whoever wins this does qualify for Capcom Cup to win the next $1 million after Kakeru and Uma, who won the first year. So again, I hope this gives you guys a little bit of fun backgrounds on all these players. And although, like I said, I don't have much background for Micky, those of you out there who are always love rooting for the underdog and love rooting for, the player coming out of nowhere, like Zen was at Capcom Cup 2 years ago, 4 years ago? I don't know. I can't keep track anymore. What is time? Time is but a construct. When Zen had that crazy run that 1 year for Street Fighter V, and then like Blas did this last year at Capcom Cup 11, Micky might be that player for you guys to root for as well, because if he takes out Angrybird and let's say he beats the next player, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my God, what is happening here? So, there's a lot of reasons to root for all these players. And again, I have nothing but respect, and I admire these players so much. The talent and skill level to be able to achieve even just the top 8 here at Evo is just something that, like, man, like I'm not, like, it's just, as a former competitor myself, I've always dreamed of being able to achieve something like this. And, I've never had the talent level to get to this level here. But, to make it to this level, I can tell you as a former competitor that the amount of skill and talent that these players possess is just is you can't put it into words. It's not something you can measure. It's just so much of it is just an instinct. It's just so much of it is just, you know, understanding human psychology, having the reads and such. And so, you know, I really wanted to make sure that these 8 players had a chance to shine and have a chance for you guys to really, you know, understand where they came from and such. So if you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below who you are rooting for to win, and let me know if you enjoyed this content that I just made here. Like I said, this is just on the fly. Shout outs to Peter, basically my producer these days, lending me all of the equipment I needed to be able to do all this. So thank you very much, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. And let's watch top 8 later today, and scream our lungs off for our favorite players, all right? So take care, and I'll see you guys next time. And I'll be on the floor watching Evo, and you'll probably be able to hear me scream from the streams. Anyways, take care. I'll see you guys next time, and peace out.